This has been a little bit of a weird shift these last couple of weeks with the full moon. I personally have been hit with very, very low points. So low that it feels like I'm absolutely kind of traumatized from the solar plexus to points where I'm literally like paralyzed with it and I can't get out. Sometimes when we as sensitive people go through these low patches, it's as if we fall in a hole and we try and kind of like climb out of the hole and we just can't. We try and think positive and we just can't. We can't. But one of my favourite spiritual teachers, Bashar, explains it like this. We never kind of like, we never believe we're on a law unless we believe that law is going to contribute to our spiritual evolution at some point. He says something along those lines. And when I really think about this, it kind of makes sense, because for us to feel low for a while, we must believe that that low feeling is going to help us in some way or another. And when I really analyse this deeply, it's true, because sometimes we feel like we have to feel that low and we have to express this low feeling to anyone around us, which can affect them, by the way. We have to be very careful with this. But if we express these low feelings, we feel like this is going to help in some way. But in actual fact, it doesn't help anyone else apart from yourself. So the reason these lows come, even though we kind of on a pendulum effect, like we'll have highs, then we have lows like a pendulum. Because we're on a higher level of evolution now, the pendulum doesn't swing as much. So these lows that we have don't last very long. Like we can literally like bring ourselves back within a couple of days now. Whereas a few years ago, it would have been a couple of weeks, couple of months, even a couple of years. You see people out there who go on this negative cycle for years. And occasionally you see people who go on it forever, for the rest of their life. So it all depends on what level you are spiritually, and also the discipline you have in your mind, because as you evolve, you become more disciplined to love yourself more. And when you love yourself more, you can kind of like, you've got the discipline in your mind to focus on positives rather than negatives. But this is where the paradox comes in, because like, can you have a positive without a negative? I guess I want to hear off you guys whether you've experienced highs for a long, long time without any lows, or when you experience like a really high, like say on a substance that you take, whatever, and you just have that amazing, blissful time, do you experience a low after that? Because I'm still working on this, guys. I'm still experimenting, and so far I was on a high for quite a long time when I was on the amphetamine, because I told you in a previous video I was taking a microdose of amphetamine in my coffee every 2 days. And when I was doing that, I was on a high for quite a long time and there was no lows. But then lately I've stopped that and I've decided to take cannabis like once or twice a week again. And sometimes with the weeds, you can like, especially for people like us, it can give us this amazing blissful feeling just because it's shown us realizations. Like, like when I take weed, like the things it shows us is like unbelievable. It's like, especially if I take a high dose, I'll probably like just lie on the bed or I'll go out for a walk, and it literally shows us realizations that you just know that haven't even come into reality yet, but it shows you how it's all working. And when it does this, because we're on this spiritual path, it can give us like this amazing, joyful, blissful feeling, just to be able to have the experience of seeing how these complex dynamics work and they all come together to create the reality that we find ourselves in now. So these massive highs are amazing, but a couple of days after I had that, I had this amazing low, which was a couple of days ago, which was like horrible. It was like really, really low feeling in my solar plexus, and I just couldn't get out of it. It was like trying to climb out of a massive hole, and I just couldn't. It was so powerful, I was just paralyzed with it. Have you guys experienced anything like that when you've been on these highs? Lows are usually caused by a negative thought. So that negative thought has to come from somewhere. But is it possible to like get rid of all our negative thoughts and get through any trauma that we have so that we have no more negative thoughts anymore? Is that even possible? Or would that stop our evolution, our spiritual evolution? So what's your thoughts on that, guys? Like, do you think it's possible to evolve to a point where there's no more negative thoughts at all, there's no more lows, all it is highs constantly, or not? I've been contemplating Jesus a lot as well recently and his teachings, because there's a lot of verses in the Bible that relate to the fact that if you focus just on love, that can perish the negativity and the evil away, which is true to an extent, okay? Because when I was really contemplating this, I realized that anything evil or negative is a path to self-destruction. So basically anything negative will self-destruct eventually, but anything to do with love never self-destructs. It always like just grows and grows and grows, and it's always there. Like the love's unlimited. But evil and negativity is very limited, because the way the law of karma works, anything you put out that's evil will cause destruction to anyone you put it out to, but it always comes back to yourself. So evil just seeks to destroy itself all the time. So is it possible to transcend negativity altogether, like the teaching in the Bible? And if we do that, what would happen? Like if we just focus on positive constantly, would we ever grow? You see, or can you get to a point where you don't no longer need to grow, like I was talking about in the previous video? Because if that's true, then if we get to this point where we no longer need to grow, and all there is left is positivity, then what would life be like? I've been on these roles for months, and it's been brilliant. Like I haven't needed the negative. So why the fuck does the negative always come back? Do you know what I mean? Like, why does it come back? Why does it always come back? And you can say to yourself, well, there's no more negative anymore. Like I've got rid of all my past traumas, which I have, by the way. I can't remember any past traumas that I haven't processed in my mind and got over them now. Like I'm at peace with all the traumas that I can remember. But the negativity still comes in now and again, and it just takes over. Like, why? Maybe because there's some kind of like past traumas in us that we don't remember. And this is where things like Dianetics comes in. Dianetics therapy is all your traumas are locked away and your mind won't access them. But once you do access them, then you can process them. And the way Dianetics therapy works is, I did this for a while a few years ago, and it really worked with a lot of my traumas. It actually cleared them. The way it works is you dig deep into your mind and try and find these traumas when you were young that you don't remember, because the mind locks them away. It doesn't want you to remember them. But once you find them and remember them, and you go over them again and again in your mind, until eventually you've gone over it so many times that it just loses its charge, that's when it clears. And I honestly think that this Dianetics therapy works. It's one of the only things that works. I've tried many therapists in my time. I've had advanced psychotherapists, I've had counselors, all kinds, and all of them have just gave up. They've said, like, we don't know what's wrong with you. We don't know what's wrong with you, Lee. Because obviously my whole life my mind's worked very differently to others, and I've found it very hard to fit in with society. But the only therapy that worked, I would say, for me is the Dianetics therapy. There is a book called Dianetics. I'd advise any of you guys to read that if you're interested in getting rid of past traumas. But yeah, I mean, it might be traumas in us still that we just haven't resolved yet, because we can't resolve them, because we can't remember them. It could be as simple as that. Because let's face it, guys, like, we, on our spiritual level, if we've got something traumatic in our minds, we would tackle it head on. Like anything that's traumatic to us, we'd sit down in a dark room with just our mind, and we'll go dive deep and we'll tackle it head on until we resolve it. But if that thing we need to resolve isn't there and we don't remember it, how are we going to do that? So it could be that, guys. I don't know. What's your theory on that? I've also been listening a lot to Joe Dispenza recently. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a theory that it's all to do with brain neurons firing up and creating new pathways, because a lot of us have been programmed when we're young to think that even thinking negative is a normal thing. But his research is very interesting. There's a lot of his videos on YouTube, interviews. So so if you just type Joe Dispenza in and listen to some of his stuff, you probably already know who he is if you listen to my videos. But his theories are very interesting. And they go along the lines of every day we just do the same things, we think the same thoughts. Our brains are just wired up to do the same things and think the same negative thoughts constantly. And if we continue doing that, the brain's just going to create new neurons or keep the same neurons, and they're never ever going to change. So in order to change, you have to start implementing more meditation, more positive thinking, and not allowing these negative thoughts to just fire up. Because eventually, with his research, apparently the more you do this, the more the negative thoughts disappear, and it creates new neurons that create positive thoughts. So it could be something like as simple as that. It could be as simple as just basically practice thinking positive thoughts. But this is very hard to do, like for most people. It's extremely hard to do because everywhere you go, there's just negativity right in front of you. I don't watch the news, and I'm sure a lot of you guys don't watch the news either. But everywhere we go, we can't help hearing negative things everywhere because people are talking about the news. Okay, you'll go in a coffee shop and there's papers all over the tables with negative stories on them. And you hear conversations behind you, like someone's talking about this horrible war going on somewhere, or the Prime Minister is doing this stupid thing. Like, it's just everywhere. Negativity is just trying to get in everywhere. And it's very hard to avoid it without just staying in your house like a little prison, or going to the woods and just sitting by a tree every day. But obviously you kind of do that forever. You kind of just run away from negativity forever. So so it does take discipline, guys. Like, I think it is discipline that's like gets us through this polarity cycle of positive and negative. It's discipline. The more we discipline the mind, and the more we realize that all there is love. Like, I'm sure some of you have had ayahuasca journeys or been so high that you've experienced the oneness, and that oneness is just love. When you are everything, all there is love. So everything's already in order. But it's just the negative thoughts that take us out of that order temporarily. But then the paradox of that is the negative thoughts train our mind to focus on positive thoughts, you see, because without the negative, we don't have the discipline. We don't learn the disciplines needed to focus on the positive and be more loving. Going back to a more metaphysical stance on this, when I take cannabis, for instance, on a high dose, it shows all these realizations, because cannabis shows you your own faults. So it shows you your own faults, and you already know how to deal with your own faults. But when you come off the cannabis, you kind of like, you don't remember fully what it showed you. So it could even be as complex as this, guys. And what I'm going to say here is very nuanced. It's not something many people have even realized yet, but the cannabis itself could be showing you things, okay? So your mind's now seeing the realization, and it has to catch up. But the only way it can catch up to that realization is to throw a load of negative feelings, negative thoughts at you, so that you get over them and discipline your mind enough to eventually reach that level that the cannabis has showed you. You see, it could be working like that. Like, I've thought about this many, many times. This is very deep, guys. This is like extremely deep. It doesn't get much deeper than this when it comes to spiritual evolution. But literally, these highs we have could be showing the mind what's possible. And maybe it's a case of we cannot kind of experience what's possible on these highs without catching up to it. And if this is the case, this is very dangerous, because if people don't understand this knowledge and they're just going on these journeys, these highs, I don't think they quite realise what's to come. Because like Bashar says in his transmissions, these substances are basically a permission slip to see what's possible, so that your mind can then achieve these highs without the substance. This is where it starts to get even more interesting, guys. So is it safe to use these substances when you're already on a spiritual path? These topics just go on and on for infinity, but evolution itself goes on and on for infinity. The evolution process never stops. I've gone through this in previous videos, guys. The evolution process just goes on and on and on. Once you've achieved one level of awareness, there's just more and more to learn. It gets more and more complex, like a spider web of infinite complexity. And it just never ends. But is this thing that's never ever ending just the mind? Is it just thoughts? Or is it real, true reality? And is it the way, is it the direction we have to go? Or can you just stop? Can you just stop where you are and just put yourself in the present moment and stop evolving? Is that even possible? Or will that only last so long before something else will come along and hit you and say, come on, you need to go further now? But one thing I do know, guys, is the further we go with this, the more complex the thoughts go, and the more we learn, we evolve more to the all that is. And the more we evolve to the all that is, the more at peace we are and the more love we feel. And maybe that is the cycle, and whichever direction you choose to go on that cycle, maybe that is just the way it is. Everybody's got different ways of doing it. Okay, and those who don't do it, those who don't learn from the mistakes and stay in the same cycle, though we all know those people, maybe they keep getting kicked up the arse constantly, over and over again in the same karmic cycle, and they'll never learn. Maybe there's people like that. But it's a choice. It's a choice. So yeah, what do you think, guys? I feel better now.